Hey, Composing Gloves here, and we're going to be talking about the tritone substitution. Now, I have a whole video on tritones and what the deal is with those jazzy things. Go check that video out if you don't know what a tritone is and you don't know some of the properties, like it lands in the middle, there's only 6, weird implications with the circle of fifths, which we are going to now delve into a little bit further. Now, of course, I'm also relying on the fact that you've watched my 2-5-1 chord progression video and you're like, oh yeah, cool, this is a cool thing. Now, I'm going to be using MIDI because MIDI is, in this case, going to be superior for what I kind of want to do. We're looking at ideas and concepts, not so much how it looks on music, sheet music, whatever, blah, 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 blah. We're going to be doing it here because I like this method more. So that's the way life is. If you are a sheet music person that die-hard sheet music, there are a number of excellent videos that also do it, but most of them are guys at the piano. So like, I almost did an at the piano one because it's honestly easier to do there, and I get a high quality piano versus this thing, which is great for the applications that I use it for, but not in this particular scenario. It's not the best. So let's talk about what is the deal with this. So you know about the 2-5-1 chord progression. Now I'm going to keep things mega simple because mega simple is the way people should start. So we're going to start out with our 2-5-1 chord progression, which is of course in the key of C, 2 is the D, 5 is the G, and then 1 is the C. This isn't news. Now you just write out the diatonic chords for that. So we go, oh yeah, here and here, 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 because it's G major, D minor, and then of course C major. So we get, and that's really great and dandy. Now I am going to leave out the 7th for now to keep things simple. Now you will like some people will throw their hats off and get angry and stuff, but I think learning, it's like the way to go as far as easiness. So the easiest way to understand the tritone substitution, there's a way that you intuitively grasp all the implications, well not all of them, but you grasp a whole lot more of them. And then there's one where you just know the formula. So I'm going to teach you the formula real fast because I feel like going that way is actually easier because then it gives motivation to learn the rest of the stuff. So a tritone substitution, this is our chord progression. This is kind of an interesting chord progression, blah, 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 blah. We've played it. Let's say we've been playing the song for a while. Though. It's getting kind of old. It's not as interesting as it could be. You know, it's like, now you're playing, like, you know, you're doing your thing and they're like, dude, I need to vary this chord progression up. And so what you want to do is you want to do a tritone substitution. Now, the basic idea is you take a chord. Usually you're going to be taught that it's the 5th if you're being trained. But I'll show you some cool things that happen when you do it on other chords that relate to the circular chord progression. But you take a chord, it's the 5th, you take it and you go, hey, I'm going to replace you with your tritone instead of the G. So you think, so the formula is you take it, you look at G because that's the root. So you always do it with the root. If you've inverted it or whatever, make sure you're thinking of the root. And you think, what in the key of G? So you've shifted keys to G, and you're like, what is a tritone from G? And you're like, oh, that is that is C sharp. I'm sorry, that took so long. C sharp. So you think, okay, so it's C sharp. I could have looked here, and it would have been easier. And you go, all right, so I'm just going to replace you with a C sharp major chord. Now, some people are throwing their hats off right now because it's technically tritone substitution involves a few other notes, but we're going to just do this for now. So we say, oh, G, get rid of you. We're going to put a C major chord, a C sharp major, because this C sharp is a tritone away from G. And remember, tritones are symmetrical, so you can do some weird things as well with inversions and stuff. But as you see here, we've just created something that looks quite nice. We have something that goes C, C sharp, C. That's a chromatic movement, stepwise movement downward in the bass. That's really nice. We have this similar movement here and another movement like that here, and they're all matching. So it's very powerful movement, and these notes are the same. So this is what it sounds like. So you could be playing your 2-5-1, and then occasionally you could throw in a tritone substitution, where all you do is simply look at the 5th, you say replace you with the tritone, and then you're on your way. So this is what it would sound like. So I'll play a 2-5-1 first. So we have, now I'll do a tritone substitution. And so I played a couple wrong notes and whatever, but you get the idea. We can use it to vary our stuff. And if you combine that with rhythmic syncopations, different colors, voicings, all sorts of stuff, you could get some really interesting sounding things. You see, a harmonically very powerful tool. Now, that's a 251 in sense. Now I'm going to toss in that last thing I've been leaving out. So they're going to say that it is done. And if you remember from my previous video, what is the chord that outlines a tritone that shifts a key? You're right. It is the dominant 7 chord. So if we were to play it G dominant 7, and this is normally going to happen anyways if you're playing a 251. So it's very common. And then we might even add one over here just for the kicks. So you see, we have a sort of an interesting deal here when we add the dominant 7. Now you replace it with the tritone, and it works even better. So if we take this back down to C sharp major, and it's still, well, the nice thing about MIDI is you can do that, and it's the exact same chord. It's just been shifted. And you know, so we could even keep the major 7. Oh man, that was crazy. We could even keep the major 7 and it'd be fine. So one thing, so let's talk about, so that's how it works. Now you might be saying, well, gee, so people are going to yell at you to include the 7th because there's the tritone. Like it's outlined here. And otherwise, it's not really a tritone substitution because the tritone's not there. So you're still substituting a tritone away. But this relationship of having this tritone in this particular tritone that we talked about in the last video is really important. So we're going to talk about that right now. I was going to talk about it a little bit later, but we'll bring that up later. So you can take this with any chord. Let's look at this. Let's look at why this works so well as a separate harmony, a separate movement. So if we were to play a G major chord over here, a G7, and then, okay, so here we've got our G7 chord, and we know that the tritone substitution is that whole C sharp thing. So we can clone it and bring it down to C sharp. Now we might be saying, well, geez, these look like loads apart. The only thing that really looks like it lines up is this guy. But that's because we haven't put it in its nearest inversion. So this has an extraordinary relationship to each other because of the tritone. So if we were to put this in its nearest inversion, so we take these things and move them down an octave. So first we'll take the F and move it down an octave. And we go, hey, that's the same note. And we go, hey, that's the same note. They're shared notes. They appear in both chords. And then we take this note and we move this down an octave. And we go, hey, we have a resolution outward. It's kind of a nice deal. We have 2 chromatic stepwise movements. So it's a really nice thing. Like they are related in a way. And we could look at this and we could draw out ways that we could shift keys from here. We get to weird keys that we could not get to before. They're just like, they're far out there. They're not related to the circle of fifths. We could just jump to weird keys and we could do all sorts of madness. But for now, we're going to leave that sort of alone because, well, it's just way cool deal here when you do tritone substitutions. Now, a lot of the stuff is like more advanced, but most people just simply substitute it in and get going. But if you wanted to really get wild, you could sit here and think about it and come up with the way you could then shift the tonal center of your music and create something really cool. So, well, let me play it for you, I guess, real quick. So you see, this is like, oh yeah. So it's good stuff, man. So that's why the 7th is so important. If you don't have the 7th, you're missing part of that relationship and the same properties no longer exist. Now let's talk about what happens when you want to apply this in the circle of fifths. Because think about this. What I was thinking when I was first learning this was like, well, geez, why? Let's get rid of the 7ths for now. Make it a little simple. So why can't I just why can't I just change why can't I just replace anything with a tritone? And then I discovered something that's totally a thing. I just didn't know it was a thing yet. That's the tritone, because it plays a role, as you saw in the previous video, it shifts things by the fourths. It plays a role in moving chromatic circular chord progressions. That sounds pretty fancy. Now let's just do it. So think about this. So if we replace this, we get this thing, right? And then we have the nice chromatic movement downward. Well, we do the same thing with G. Now, what is the not with G, with the 2 chord, which is D. So we might be saying, what is the tritone from D? And you think about it and you're like, that is G sharp. So we say, oh, okay. So you put a G sharp there and look at this, chromatic and then a 5-1. So by replacing so if you remember circular chord progressions, how we have the 2 and the 5 and then the 1, well, you could take any one of those things as long as it follows. I think it works up to the 3rd, because once you get to the 4th, it can pull directly to the 1, and then if the 7 pulls to the 1 as well. So it doesn't work with everything, but for the most part, if you're gonna do the 2, the 5, or the 3, or the 6, you can do it, and that is you can replace it with a tritone and then follow the circular chord progression out, but you've now replaced what was typically a 2-5 with a chromatic step downward, and it totally works. Check it out. So think about this. So we played 2. Now we're going to play through 2 with a tritone. A tritone, now I'm going to keep it minor to keep it consistent, but a tritone in the chord progression. You've moved the 2 chord up from its diatonic, from D, tritone up from D. So you've left your key, you're thinking about what's the tritone from D, and then you do it from there. Now then you could do it backwards, where you replace the 5 with the tritone. Now I did it weird because I should have switched to F. So it's whatever. So as you can see, you can do that anywhere. So like, let's say, let's do something. So you remember I'm getting excited about this. I'm just so excited. Let's do this with the 6. So the 6 pulls to the 4, right? So 6 would be A minor, and then D, which would be the 2, and now it goes 2-5-1, because that's the circular chord progression, if you remember that. So we have D, G, B, and then 2, 5, 1. So we do that, and it sounds really nice and dandy. Now, instead of doing that, what we could do is we could take this and replace it with the tritone. So what's the tritone from A? Well, if you go A, you know the 5th is E, and then you go down. So you get, oh, it's E flat. In this case, it's going to say it's D sharp because it's weird. So we're going to just take this to D sharp. And look at this. We have all sorts of nice chromatic movements happening. And then we can replace this with a tritone. Tritone substitutions are so cool. Like a lot of videos, when I was first learning this and looking it all up and doing all that stuff, they wouldn't explain this part of it. This is the coolest part of the tritones. It's just replacing the 5th is like cutting yourself short, man. You can replace it with all sorts of junk, and we haven't even included dominant 7ths or substitutions or 9ths or anything. Hopefully you're beginning to see this is a harmonically rich, amazing, powerful tool available to you. And we've just been dealing with freaking triads, dude. It's just so, ooh, man. Ooh, so nice. And then you can start doing stuff. So, and then we could talk about voicings. We could talk about how to remove, like maybe you don't want to voice everything. Maybe you just want to voice the 1, 3rd, and the 7th, or the 5th, and the 7th. Or maybe you're doing a suspended and then you do a 7th. I don't know. You can do all sorts of crazy things. The idea is hopefully it's in your head. And I don't want you to feel like you get it at the end. Not like, I want you to feel like oh, that's what a tritone is. Look at all these great things. I want you to be like, holy crap, this is like, I want the doors to just open up in front of you and be like, whoa, these are some serious options I have available to myself right here. And then now you can be like, whoa, these options are here. Like before you didn't have it. At least that was where I was hoping you were. Not hoping, but like expected you to be, was that you were like, you didn't know that these were things. And now you're like, this is incredible, like some incredible options. And so, yeah, anyways, that's the tritone substitution. Hopefully I was able to take you to a spot where you know what it is, you've seen some applications, and you see the future capabilities of the tritone. So if you have any questions about this, let me know. It is quite an exciting topic because it is really, once you step into chromatic harmony, it's pretty hard to step out of it. It is very fun to do. It's really easy to sell yourself short and not use it when you're composing. And once you become second nature, it's like the coolest. That's why jazz is so much fun to play. It's just becomes an addiction once you start doing it, because it's so much more interesting in so many ways. And then of course, we could talk about genres and qualities and consistencies and stuff. It's all good stuff. It's unique. If you have any questions, let me know. Subscribe and have a blessed day.